Well, hello, Forest Meadow, and welcome back to our sermon reflections. And as we have been reflecting upon Matthew 24 and 25, I think we can easily see how much the Bible emphasizes and teaches us to be prepared for his second coming. And so remember, we also qualified what being prepared means. It does not mean, as some would suggest, that we just store up ammunition and we store up food and we store up water and supplies and gas masks and things like that. And by the way, I am not suggesting that we should not have food stores or anything else that I just mentioned. That's not to me to say. Let me be clear about this. You must pray about that sort of preparation and do as the Lord leads. We have to be a people who can use the information that God has given to us and then use discernment. But remember that conscience plays into this to a very large degree. And so, but the type of preparation that Jesus mentions, that we're referring to, is explicitly called out in the passage in chapter 24 and 25. He mentions prayer. We are to be prayerful. We are to expect that there's going to be false prophets who look like the real thing. We should have an expectation of cosmic level events and signs. He tells us we should be on the alert. We should be watching and waiting for the Master's return. And we're supposed to be active in our waiting, ready for his return. And then our readiness is compared to the 10 virgins, 5 of which kept their lamps lit, and they had extra oil that might be needed in the case that the bridegroom came later than expected. They were prepared in the event that the bridegroom would delay. And so think about these 5. They had forethought, they had insight, and they took action to be fully ready for his coming. Now, in my mind, one of the questions that comes up is, what actually prevents us from being prepared for a second coming? What is hindering us from being like the 5 wise virgins mentioned in Matthew chapter 25? Well, there's many things, but there's a few of them that I just want to point out. The first one is worldly goals. I think that worldly goals are very effective at keeping our eyes off of the coming kingdom. They keep us preoccupied with our desires. And granted, some of what we want are actually more like needs, right? And Paul mentions one of these major ones in 1 Corinthians 7, verses 29 through 35, speaking of singleness and marriage. But that's just an example. But nonetheless, the stuff we work on now with the goal to have a better life later, they actually turn out to be some of the greatest distractions from seeking the kingdom of God and the second coming of the Messiah. We're not looking for it anymore. They're almost always worldly distractions, and to some degree they may be necessary, but it's helpful to just be aware that we can give an inordinate amount of time or energy to those types of things which are even necessary. And so we should try to keep this in check, just be mindful of it. And so these things often tie together with worry and fear. We talked about this probably over a year ago, but remember what the Lord taught us in Matthew 13:22. He says that the worry of the world and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. And it's so easy to worry that the things that we have worked and labored so hard for might be taken from us or destroyed. And so we invest a lot more time trying to secure our investment of our own time and money. But remember the Lord's words, what he taught us. And he said, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. And then here's where it all comes together. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And so another thing that we should be mindful of is entertainment. You know, it is really possible for the devil to render most Christians ineffective without leading them into direct sin. All he has to do is give them enough funny and enjoyable things to watch, to be entertained by. And it's usually the things that we take pleasure in that really reflect our focus, at least to some degree. And so it's good to keep an eye on this, just to be watchful of it, right? And so for me personally, this area requires regular adjustment because I think the natural tendency is to indulge a little bit or maybe a lot, especially if the things that we indulge in are not inherently sinful. So we pay less attention to those areas. So let's lift our eyes from worldly things, set them upon Jesus, and eagerly wait for his return. It's helpful for me to remember that the Lord told the disciples that he would not drink again from the fruit of the vine until he drank it new with them in the kingdom. I think it's such a beautiful passage. There is a healthy sense in which we, as believers, withhold our wholesome delights because we want to share them with the Lord himself. And so let's go ahead and move on to our questions for the week. Our first question is this: why did Jesus say the Son did not know the day or the hour? And for this, I want you to go ahead and look forward to Philippians 2, verses 5 through 11. Number 2, how should we deal with uncertainty of the time of the rapture and the day of the Lord? Number 3, why would Jesus' coming be a surprise to many people? Number 4, why do we need to prepare for his coming in the first place? Number 5, when is the right time for the Lord's return? And this next question, number 6, kind of goes along with it. When was the right time for Jesus to come the first time? Number 7, why does the bridegroom delay? Boy, that's a very powerful question. You should really look into that. Number 8, what does the oil represent and what does it demonstrate? Number 9, what does preparedness for Jesus' return look like for us individually, and what does it look like for us as a church? And finally, number 10, how do we know if we are ready for his return? Well, folks, that's about all the time that we have for today. But just as a quick teaser, this next week, we're going to be looking at the parable of the talents. And so I've got a question for us. My question is this: why does the master give more to some than he does to others? Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you so much for your desire to dig deeper into the scriptures, and I hope you have a great day.